Do we acknowledge that Hamas operates close to these areas and that Israel wanted to? Israel did these daily pauses in fighting and opened up safe routes for civilians to flee. Do we acknowledge that Hamas operated near these areas?
Yes, of course.
I mean, you're right. Israel blockades the Gaza Strip, but why do they do that? And why does Egypt also do it? And why does Israel blockade the Gaza Strip, but it doesn't blockade the West Bank?
That's the whole reason that bombing the hospitals was okay, right? Is because they had fucking weapons in tunnels.
But even Amnesty International has said that the El Shifa hospital had an interrogation site in it, right? If there was a temporary ceasefire right now, do you accept that the blockade would probably have to be even more strict than it is now, because Israel is seeing the consequences of what happens when it lets materials into the Gaza Strip that can be used to build tunnels? You understand the blockade would...
No, the consequences of what they should learn if they were fucking decent human beings is that their ethno-state led to the uprising of fucking terrorism. Oh, that was a fast answer. Fastest answer in the West.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, what's up?
Hey, you're gay.
Okay.
What's up, man? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, so I went to a Palestine protest with Gorp.
Yeah.
So I was coming back. I've seen you done the Israel-Palestine stuff a few times now. You changed your mind yet?
I mean, not really. We're reading an article that's like relatively pro-Palestinian right now, kinda, but
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
So what are your general thoughts, though?
I mean, oh boy, okay. My general thoughts, like Israel basically after October 7th is in the right for trying to get rid of Hamas.
Okay. Is that it? Or do you have anything else?
That's my general thoughts.
You don't think it's kind of ridiculous how far they've gone? Or that we actually might be... well, I mean, what about the war crimes? Like, the things that are actually war crimes. Like, not even speculation about genocide or not. Like, legitimately verified war crimes. And then I would like to ask... Go ahead.
What war crimes are you talking about?
Literally bombing children. Like, actually bombing children. Like, the recent investigation that found... well, they are denying it. I mean, they already verified that it was Israel artillery and that it was only children victims.
I mean, then it's not necessarily a war crime, though, right?
Bombing children? Yeah. Bombing hospitals is also a war crime under the Geneva Convention. That's also not
necessarily a war crime.
Denying aid is also a war crime and was deemed a war... What do you mean? They cannot be unless if they're considered... Oh, go ahead.
Do you think bombing children is always a war crime?
No, it's not always a war crime. It depends, right? And it has to depend on whether they're reasonably considered a active combatant or not. But unarmed children are not an active combatant. And
do you think bombing unarmed children? Do you think bombing unarmed children is always a war crime?
My understanding is yes, unless if you got something different.
I mean, not necessarily. They can be lawfully killed as collateral damage, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess so. But that's not bombing children. That's children accidentally getting collateral by bombing something else. So, like, if you are bombing a Hamas target and it just happens, to a child is running by or something, you didn't bomb the child per se, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. The other one would be the denial of aid into Gaza, which, I mean, while Israel has denied it, literally every single aid organization has come out and said that the people stopping them is Israel.
I mean, they've started to open up more stuff, haven't they? Like, they opened up the Erez crossing, started letting more aid in. The U.S. built their J-Lots Pier. They started letting the aid in.
Yeah, that's after being fucking lambasted but nonstop by aid organizations, which also have been struck during by the IDF. I mean, how many aid organizations had people killed who were not active combatants? Also, we're talking about bombing people that were fleeing areas who are also not active combatants. If you're dropping the equivalent of saying evacuate an area and then you bomb the people evacuating the area, that is a war crime.
What do you mean bomb the people who evacuate the area? What exactly do you mean by that? Because there's
the IDF, after dropping evacuation orders in the first wave of bombing from northern Gaza, they bombed people that were actively leaving and fleeing. So
do we acknowledge that Hamas operates close to these areas and that Israel wanted to? Israel did these daily pauses in fighting and opened up safe routes for civilians to flee. Do we acknowledge that Hamas operated near these areas?
Yes, of course. But what do you expect from it? What do you expect from that, though? Like, of course, Hamas might, use the same routes that civilians are using, but at that moment, Hamas isn't, being an active combatant if they're also part of the fleeing. And then also you get into the question of how much collateral, how many innocent people do you kill in order to guarantee you get terrorists?
I mean,
it's always a funny statement.
There are discussions of proportionality that we can have, but like any discussion of proportionality is automatically going to rule out any discussion of distinction, right? Because proportionality is not a failure in distinction. Proportionality is a failure in proportionality.
I mean, there is several incidents that we can look into where there were active combatants with Hamas involved, even if they were operating in or around the area which the IDF claims. But, a lot of this is going to come down to on-the-ground investigations, revealing more and more stuff. But I think there is a proportionality to be said of that they seemingly have targeted people who were civilians with no active combatants nearby, which is a very big deal. But also, in war, you do not just fucking bomb highly dense populated areas because we want to get a few terrorists. I mean, maybe if you're Obama, but that was the major critique of Obama, and people wanted to go after him for war crimes, presidential immunity bullshit. What about the UN numbers? The ratio is kind of 1-to-1. Excuse me?
With the new UN numbers, the revised numbers, the ratio of civilians and combatants killed is relatively 1-to-1 with identified victims. But there are more unidentified victims that they, in theory, could change that ratio.
Here, let me look. Do you have a link to post that in real quick?
Yeah, the UN...
I just want to look at those.
UN released the new fucking... numbers of hostilities in Gaza. I think it's only the identified victims, which if you look at it, I think lowered the number of women and children killed. So to report 30,000 casualties in total, or 30,000 deaths in total, I think. And I think Israel at this point claims to have killed 14,000 Hamas members. So I mean that's a decent ratio. Pretty close to 1-to-1. But my understanding is that this is only for identified victims, and there's more victims that aren't identified yet, or are theoretically trapped under rubble.
Yeah,
or whatever.
I want to look into those numbers more, just because it sounds pretty sussy right off the bat. But I'll lay off of that point just until I've looked into that a little bit further, since there's I didn't know that they put out new figures. So I'll take a look at that. But I want to a good question to ask yourself is, if you're an innocent Palestinian, and this is kind of what really puts it into a genocide category for me and a lot of people, is asking yourself, if you were an innocent Palestinian person, what is the likelihood that you will not be targeted and attacked, and what could you do to survive this conflict? Okay, so you can't go north. You're going to be denied immigration refugee status if you head north. And if you go south all the way, you're going to be denied refugee status in the south. You do not have any international airport, any means of transport, and even if you do, it's not like you have a passport that is going to just let you into the U.S. or any other country. When you are in an area where Hamas is actively in, of course, you're going to be in the middle of the fucking IDF's hell fury in the area. But then you are told to evacuate, and then they say, well, Hamas is evacuating, so we're going to bomb the evacuation routes. So then you go to a hospital, but they say the hospitals have Hamas, or help Hamas, or because at first it was Hamas tunnels, then it was, oh, well, some of the people that were giving aid and working in the hospitals were Hamas, or that they were giving aid to Hamas members. And then, okay, so now you can't get aid at a hospital without being bombed. And it's like, okay, well, how about we go to aid trucks? Okay, well, then the aid trucks, we've seen several bombings at aid sites. We've seen, the famous shooting because, the trucks were getting overran because people are desperate, hungry, and there's a famine, and you can't get yourself access to the right amount of food that's actively being brought into the country, because for the longest time it was being stopped, and now that it's being slowly opened back up, it's not being fast enough to the amount of people that are starving in the area. And then you don't have access to electricity, water, proper shelter, and the last bastion of refuge is now under siege. Where do these people go, and what do you do? Right?
I mean, but the Israel established a designated humanitarian zone that they haven't bombed yet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can go there. I mean, you're talking about like the consequences of war, and they're all bad, and they're all terrible.
This isn't a war. This isn't a war. This is not a fucking war. This is not an army versus an army. It's a terrorist group that was funded and brought into power by the IDF in order to increase military activity into the region. I don't like. This isn't a war. They haven't even had an election since, what was it, 2006?
2006, right? Yeah. But that's
that's
Hamas's fault because they haven't held elections. But but
who has the power in this situation? The IDF or the Palestinians? When the IDF
comes to holding elections,
the waterway.
When it comes to holding elections, Hamas has the power there. Hamas could hold elections if they wanted to.
Yes, they could, quote unquote, hold the elections, but they already have the power. They're already in power, and the people that made sure they were going to be in power is the IDF, because it's better that way anyway. But the second point of it is that who has the real power? Like, we're not even just talking about politics as like, okay, yeah, you could slap in, oh, we have a slightly less radical group. But the IDF controls the waterways, the airways, the transportation of food, the electricity, the water, and how much resources and where these people get to go. And I think that the huge power difference here, this isn't like the Palestinians want to go to fucking war with the IDF. It's the IDF has been slowly eradicating the Palestinian people for the longest fucking time. It created instability in the region. Instability created radical groups. The IDF shut down other competing political groups and helped fund the power of the most radical group. When the most radical group decided to do terrorist attacks, they decided to go fucking full hell fury and scorch earth on the Palestinian people. I just don't see how this is fair.
I mean, you're right. Israel blockades the Gaza Strip, but why do they do that? And why does Egypt also do it? And why does Israel blockade the Gaza Strip, but it doesn't blockade the West Bank?
Egypt openly said that the reason that they do it is because they do not want pretty much to deal with the IDF. Because if any Hamas members were to get into Egypt and were to attack the IDF, they would be fucking cooked. And
doesn't that suggest that the reason why Israel and Egypt blockade Gaza is because there's a lot of bad stuff that comes out of this region, because there's a lot of terrorism that comes out of it?
I'm not blaming Egypt per se, and but I am going to blame the IDF on this. Because the IDF was the ones that were forced into the region of occupied people by a fucking imperial power, and then committed many acts of violence. And I'm not going to say that there was never any fucking Muslim violence. Of course there was, right? You're shoving two people of opposite religions that believe they have a divine right to this area. And one of them is funded by and backed by the major world powers, while the other one has fucking sticks and stones for the most of their life, right? In comparison, like not literally sticks and stones, but you get what I mean when it comes to like funding aid and technology here.
I mean, sure, but I don't see that. I don't see how it's relevant when it comes to like the moral standing of these nations.
IDF? What do you mean it doesn't? I mean, it morally matters that the fact that the IDF's goal and they have not been too subtle with their messaging, is to eradicate Hamas, and that they label any Palestinian in the area as Hamas, and that they say they have a divine right to this area, and not only that, have actively been open with their plans to settle into the Gaza Strip and build land developments there where people already live. And not to mention the previous, history of the IDF killing journalists, torturing kids, fucking abducting kids, brutalizing people, killing Muslims, and then the history back and forth before October 7th. There was like 300 Jewish people killed by Hamas, while there was 6,200 something that was killed by the IDF.
Yeah, but don't you think we lose these things when we just count the dead bodies? Like, even though 30,000 Palestinians have died and 1,200 Israelis died on October 7th, right? The difference is Hamas literally invaded into Israeli territory and then threw grenades into bomb shelters and then shot the people running out of bomb shelters. And they indiscriminately shot into porta potties, and they indiscriminately launched thousands of rockets into Israeli territory directed at Israeli civilians. These are like intentional civilian deaths, whereas like most of the deaths caused by the IDF would just be collateral damage, right?
I don't agree that it's all just mostly collateral damage. I think it's purposeful negligence, because they have actively said that they don't see a difference between Hamas and Palestinians on several occasions. They walked the statements back.
Even negligence is dolus eventialis. That's different than intention. That's different than the dolus specialis required for genocide.
Wasn't Israel fighting Britain? Isn't that after they started sending suicide bombs and rockets? Okay, but why are they sending suicide bombs and rockets? Like, if we want to keep on going back, history didn't start on October 7th, as everybody knows. We can take it back. You can take it into the Muslim Brotherhood, is what Jewish people are gonna like point to, and then Muslim people are gonna point to the Nakba, and like this is gonna go back and back and back. But the point of it is that you had a Muslim occupied area, and yes, the Jewish had claim to it a long time ago, but that doesn't fucking matter because they weren't really there anymore. It was Muslim occupied. We took a fucking group of people and shoved them in there, right? Where we knew these two people weren't going to collaborate, and then we're fucking appalled and shocked when all of a sudden it leads to violence. I don't even condone what happened on October 7th, but like it seems like an inevitable outcome of stripping an entire people of their identity, their own state, prosperity, and a life of their own. Right, and the encroachment of the IDF. If you've look at the border disputes and the land grab that the IDF has done this whole time, this was the only conclusion when you so heavily back the IDF and their atrocities. Like, and now all Palestinians are paying the price. Like, if I could get rid of Hamas, because I don't condone terrorism, even though I see where they're coming from. If you could just snap away Hamas, would do. But I think if you got rid of Hamas, there needs to be an account. You need to account for the Palestinian people's safety, and even a 1-to-1 ratio to me is fucking atrocious. Even if that's the new numbers, which I do not think that is.
1-to-1 ratio is atrocious to you, really? In one of the most densely populated areas on Earth, and
that is
where
fucking atrocious.
Where the enemy combatant literally stations himself in tunnels underground.
Nowhere in the world would we allow this to happen other than here, and it's only because
That's
America
absolutely not
Israel.
True. What do you mean? There are conflicts happening in the world that are like worse than this right now, bro. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Put it into a perspective. Put it into a perspective. If fucking 7 terrorists took like 7 hostages, took a hold of 7 hostages, and then the police came in and fucking shot the 7 terrorists, but also shot the 7 hostages, weren't even killed by the fucking terrorists, but fucking were killed by the police that were there to save them.
What do you think like a normal civilian to combatant ratio in war is?
Well, it depends on the conflict, and it's always pretty fucking bad, but it's gotten better over time. Like, let me.
Yeah, but it's like for like Iraq, it's like 1-to-4.
1 civilian for 4 terrorists, or 4 civilians for 1 terrorist? Sorry,
4 civilians for 1 terrorist.
Wasn't the U.S. supposed to be on trial for that too? And basically nothing came of it because they're saddest on the world stage.
I don't know. I don't think we might have gotten in trouble for invading Iraq.
I remember that.
I don't think this.
Yeah, I remember there was something when I was like growing up, but I don't follow. I was very young for a lot of the stuff that was going on in Iraq, so all I knew is that people were going to fight abroad and they were dying in mass numbers. Like our soldiers were getting fucking pretty much wrecked out there. So I can't speak on it too much. I'm not gonna act like I've looked into the whole Middle East invasions from the U.S. side into great detail yet. Been focused on other stuff like Myanmar is a big one. I got Gorp on that. I don't know if you've listened.
I haven't read into Myanmar yet, but just from my surface level knowledge, are you hoping for the resistance to win? I'm guessing.
Yes, but it gets a little bit more complicated than that. But yeah, generally you can say I would want the resistance to win.
Yeah, I haven't read into it yet, but it seems like
it's a fucking wild. It's a wild situation.
It seems like the military junta is pretty cringe, or hunter or whatever. I don't know how do you fucking pronounce it, but
yeah. Well, I mean, and people are like denying that China has funded the military there and actively it's helping kill people. They're like, oh, China never does anything abroad. Like, yeah, it does. Myanmar, buddy. Myanmar.
Well, people just don't care about it because they talk about Israel Palestine all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't like talking about it as much. Like, I'll talk about it here and there, but you've seen my streams. I don't talk about it too much, unless if I get like very irritated. Like on a Tasty stream, I was getting mad at somebody consistently just going human shield argument, human shield, and I was like, if it was your family there, I don't think the human shield argument would make you feel too fucking great. If you saw like the devastation, the destruction, and then when you add that on top of the history of why the shit is going down, it's like, fuck. Yeah, it doesn't make me feel good at all.
I mean, but it's kind of important though for understanding why the civilian casualties might be somewhat high, right? Like, isn't it?
Yeah, but also we haven't been able to really prove the human shield without a fucking doubt on a lot of these cases. I still am yet to find any conclusive evidence from a non-Israel biased source, such as U.S., the UK, and Israel themselves, talking about like these hospitals.
So what do you think it means when a document attributed to a Palestinian military group says the tunnel war is one of the most important and most dangerous military tactics in the face of the Israeli army because it features a qualitative and strategic dimension, because of its human and moral effects, and because of its serious threat and unprecedented challenge to the Israeli military machine, which is heavily armed and follows security doctrines involving protection measures and preemption?
I'm not saying that I don't think there's any tunnels. I'm saying that they haven't conclusively proved that these hospitals were used to tunnel and run weapons in Hamas like they were claiming. That's the whole reason that bombing the hospitals was okay, right? Is because they had fucking weapons in tunnels.
But even Amnesty International has said that the El Shifa hospital had an interrogation site in it, right?
What's that? I don't remember that being exactly. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about something recently. I was like, well, yeah, okay. But I'm referring to like post October 7th activities here, because like the major reason that the IDF was claiming that they bombed these hospitals was because of tunnels and running weapons. And then later they had to change it because when evidence was like being requested, they couldn't really come up with much. And it changed from, okay, well, there's tunnels, weapons, to there's human shields. Then it's like, well, why would you bomb the hospital if they're using human shields? Because now you're just saying, I don't give a fuck. I'll kill the innocents if it means killing the terrorists. And then they also were saying that some of the staff workers were Hamas, which is like, okay, well, then were they a Hamas fighter? Were they just part of the Hamas political party? And now I need more details. and another one was, oh well, they're giving aid to Hamas, and it's like, well, yeah, you can't fucking bomb a hospital giving aid to combatants if they're not using the hospital to actively carry out combative activities. So
Israel has invited journalists into tunnels in Al Shifa, and just because we have no reason. I don't see why we would have any reason to believe that Hamas would suddenly just stop using its interrogation site in Al Shifa.
Shit, I'm getting fucked in this game. Sorry. I'm playing Helldivers while we do this because, I feel the liberty, the liberty.
True. But also,
watch Israel. I know, Shifa tunnel. Is this in 08?
No, this
is the
video you recently sent? No, this is 5 months ago.
Okay, I'll check this out.
I think it was Reuters journalist that went there first.
Yeah, I'll take Reuters. Reuters is a pretty decent source for most things. Every source has their ups and downs.
Sure.
I'll never trust India on accurately covering Chinese news, right? That's not what I go. But I would cut up.
So, you mentioned the history earlier, right? So there was a partition plan. The Arabs rejected it, right? You can say it was justified that they rejected it, whatever. They fought a war, lost. Yeah. What do we think is the obligations on the Arab side past accepting the armistice agreement in 1949? Do we think that they have some right to just infinitely shoot?
No, of course not.
Infinitely shoot into Israel and try to reclaim territory?
No, I don't think that should be the case, because then everybody would be doing that forever, because everybody took territory from somewhere. And that's why I don't like playing the well, I had this land right at this time, blah blah blah, right? But I think the goal, right now, and what should be the focus of both the IDF and of technically Hamas, right, the political party, should be to, one, get a permanent ceasefire, which actually Hamas has been willing to do a permanent ceasefire. The IDF have been the ones that have said they're wanting to do a temporary ceasefire as they hand over the hostages and then negotiate again. But that's the only leverage that Hamas is really holding, so it doesn't really make sense why you would do that.
Hamas has always been willing to get a permanent ceasefire because they started a war and they are now losing a war. I don't know why we would think Hamas is entitled to just keep existing.
Because the IDF said they would take it, and that's what the U.S., who funds I don't think big portion of the IDF has pushed for.
When has the IDF ever said that they would accept a permanent ceasefire?
No, they didn't say permanent, but they said that the goal should be to lead to a ceasefire and get the hostages back. If there's a permanent ceasefire, of which even the IDF's allies are saying, yes, take this, then it doesn't make sense for them to really not take this, especially with how much damage they've already done to the region. And the IDF, after having a few hundred people killed, does that justify killing thousands of innocents to get at the Hamas terrorists?
I mean,
when does the IDF? Because the IDF has admitted that they wouldn't be able to kill all of Hamas, right? Their stated objective is that this can go on and tell, but they said there's no realistic way of ending the Hamas ideology, only just kill the Hamas terrorists that they can find, which isn't going to always be everybody. So they basically left themselves an indefinite door of killing Palestinian people, both terrorists and civilians. And I just don't think that's an acceptable way of viewing this conflict. They've done a lot of damage. They did very divisive blows to Hamas, and in so they have done a great deal of damage to the Palestinian people and innocent civilians. And it's time to start negotiating to get a hostage back, because those people are still being held hostage.
Israel has always been willing. Israel's always been willing to accept a temporary ceasefire for the exchange of hostages, and even been willing to release some prisoners in the West Bank for those hostages.
But that doesn't make sense for a temporary ceasefire.
I don't know why we would ever expect Israel to have to accept that this militant organization that doesn't want Israel to exist, it just has to accept that it can never get rid of it. After October 7th, when it killed like 800 civilians, like Israel, are we just saying Israel has to accept this threat to itself permanently?
Yeah, it created it. And the only way to get rid of it would be to completely genocide the Palestinian people. And that's not, I don't think we should allow that. So, yeah, we're not going to let them fucking stay and do pretty much an Iraq 2.0, right?
I mean,
or Afghanistan 2.0, sorry.
How do you think the lives of Palestinians ever get better without Hamas being gotten rid of, though? Like, you understand, like, if there was a temporary ceasefire right now, do you accept that the blockade would probably have to be even more strict than it is now, because Israel is seeing the consequences of what happens when it lets materials into the Gaza Strip that can be used to build tunnels? You understand the blockade would...
No, the consequences of what they should learn if they were fucking decent human beings is that their ethno-state led to the uprising of fucking terrorism, and that maybe if you fucking treat people like human beings and not second-class citizens and slowly eradicate them over time while openly stating how you want a fucking ethno-state and have that be your national identity, then maybe you can have peace in the region. But also, I do think that Hamas is too fucking far gone at this point, or at least the Hamas fighters, right? Because not everybody that's in part of Hamas is a Hamas fighter. But
I mean, I think so what should Israel do in response to October 7th?
They already did their fucking response, and it was so disproportionately fucked. I mean, if they don't feel like they got the fucking win, I don't know what else, because the only other win would be fucking eradicating the Palestinian people and taking the land for themselves, which, I mean, yes, they've said they wanted to do, but I don't think we can allow that. I don't want my tax dollars to go to that fucking bullshit, right?
Doesn't Hamas still have a pretty strong presence in Rafah? Isn't that the main sticking point right now? There's still hostages in 100-something hostages, assuming all of them are alive, which they probably aren't. But
yeah, that's probably not. Let's be honest. Well, we already know they're not, because an IDF strike at least killed two. At least killed two. So there's at least 98 at maximum, right? So
well, sure, yeah. I think Hamas said in their ceasefire proposal that some of the hostages returned would be corpses. But
yes, yeah. So there's going.
I mean, Hamas, my understanding, still has, I think, 6 brigades in Rafah or something. And I think Israel's main contention right now is that if they get rid of the remaining brigades in Rafah, then Hamas will have effectively lost power within most of the Gaza Strip. And I don't see a way the lives of Palestinian people ever get better without removing Hamas as the ruling authority in Gaza. I agree. Like, let's say Israel just got rid of Hamas, killed a bunch of civilians, and then withdrew from Gaza. Yeah, Hamas too would just pop up, which is why there has to be some amount of rebuilding of Gaza. But I don't see how that ever happens without Hamas getting rid of.
There's no reason for Palestinian people to not fucking hate the IDF's guts right now, right? They've just basically guaranteed Hamas 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, right? Like, this will not go down as something of like, maybe we shouldn't, because like once you hit a certain point of like your life fucking sucks, yeah, you'll do anything, right, to try to do it better, and that includes just going balls to the wall and fucking attacking one of the most powerful militaries in the world.
But how do we ever solve that without Hamas being
with fucking intervention, with fucking extreme intervention? I mean, we're talking intervention from the US, we're talking intervention from a lot of the European powers, definitely the UK. The fuckers that started this should be funding solutions to end this. We need to definitively create a strong, secure border like you were talking about. We need to get a ceasefire on the table. We got to rescue these hostages because their lives fucking matter. And I think they should be fucking worried, because they're sitting every single day. Their chances of survival and being in this hostage situation is not fucking good, right? So the IDF should be like, firstmost, a duty to their citizens should be to make sure that those hostages are coming back home alive, right? And if a ceasefire is what you can do, if the ceasefire can always be broken later, right? If like Hamas does something, Israel's just going to go fucking balls to the wall again. So at least, take that permanent ceasefire and get some hostages home. Use the peace times to secure a strict and secure border. They could beef up their military, beef up air defense, do whatever the fuck they want with their military in order to secure and ensure that their citizens feel protected. And for Palestinian people, restore, rebuild efforts, humanitarian aid, force a new election to hand over power outside of Hamas, right? Make that part of a ceasefire agreement. Where
do you think Hamas would ever accept that?
I do think they actually would.
Then why
I honestly do.
Why wouldn't they accept a temporary ceasefire then? Wait, if Hamas isn't concerned about losing power, then why?
I don't think they're concerned about losing power as much as they are concerned about the fact that, all right, there's nothing stopping the IDF from just continuing afterwards, other than public opinion. But even public opinion is split in a lot of countries on whether what the IDF is even doing is wrong or not, right? So there's that. But I think that if they want to just hand over power as without no concessions, I think you would have to establish that Palestine is its official own state. Here's a passport. Here's some trade routes. You're going to have some access to this little sliver of the sea. Maybe get some of your own power, your own food, humanitarian aid for X amount of years. So basically, ensure stability brought into the region. But this is assuming that what Hamas's demands and their statements are saying are actually true. And if they aren't true and they're going to deny this, then public opinion is going to turn against Hamas. They're going to be like, what the fuck? Both from outside perspective, people are going to be like, whoa, what the fuck is Hamas doing? Isn't this what you said you wanted? And then two, the Palestinian people might turn on Hamas if they're being offered all these concessions of which they've been fighting for their fucking entire life and actually being able to get stability. And then Hamas rejects that, even though that's been the whole plan.
I don't know if public opinion is ever turning against Hamas, dude. I don't know if you can watch those October 7th videos and still somehow support Hamas. I don't know if your mind is ever being changed, but I just don't.
But you're saying that as a Westerner. You got to think of it as a Palestinian. Think your whole life. You grow up hearing about how the literally right next door is one of the world's largest military powers. They fucking hate you. You hear all the time how they fucking kill journalists, abduct children, and beat people. Whether it's even true or not, right? It doesn't even matter. If you hear it and that's the dogma going on, then you're going to be like, oh, fuck, right? That is the truth. And this whole time you're hearing this, you've maybe even experienced it some of yourself, and you've never known what it's like to be an independent state, to be in a time of peace, and constantly the situation of your country is getting worse and worse. And the people are getting younger and younger, dying younger and younger, and there's no hope for the future. Then, what is it? What else do you have? To you, becoming a freedom fighter and giving your life to kill the IDF and try to make a change is the only thing that kind of makes sense in that. But if you give them a path to, okay, this will mean that Palestine will be its own place. You're going to be protected. We're going to separate you from the IDF. The IDF is going to be able to protect themselves. But here, you're going to have independence when it comes to energy, food, and some trade here. And it's going to take an election, a new power. You haven't had an election since 2006. We got to do that first and foremost. I think that actually gives people something to work towards. So that way, it isn't just going to be well, Hamas is the only person that's fighting against our oppressors. It's now, okay, we can be acknowledged as our own people and that there's a pathway forward. And I think that's very important and powerful.
I don't see how that pathway ever opens up without Hamas being removed as a ruling authority in Gaza. It seems like there has to be a government in Gaza that is willing to accept an Israeli state and doesn't slaughter Israeli civilians. And Hamas is not going to be...
Hamas accepts a fucking Israeli state, though.
They don't.
There's so many... What do you mean they don't?
They don't. They don't.
They've laid down conditions about ceasefires and accepted land borders that accept Israel as a state multiple times.
They've laid down... I understand they've accepted ceasefires before, which they have subsequently violated, but their charter doesn't really accept an Israeli state, does it? I mean, Article 19, there shall be no recognition of the Zionist entity.
Let me see the land proposal for, what was it, 19...
Article 2, Palestine, which extends from the River Jordan in the east to the Mediterranean in the west, and the, I don't know how to pronounce this, Ras Al Nakra in the north. Like, this is an integral territorial unit. It's the land and the home of the Palestinian people.
Oh, they want
Zionist entity therein do not annul the right of Palestinian people to their entire land, and do not entrench any rights therein for the uprising or Zionist entity.
Give me a second. I'm reading up the charters. I'll try to play Helldive. Reset the suit. Bring democracy. You play this game, by the way? You can hop in.
I have, yeah.
You like it?
I do, yeah.
Okay, that's the original charter. I don't care about the original.
No, this is a 2017 charter.
No. The one I'm reading right now. I'm going through the wiki of the charters right now.
I mean, to my knowledge, Hamas is like they're a radical Islamist organization that's never gonna accept an Israeli state, and I don't see. I mean, if you look at, I don't see how an organization that literally invaded into Israel, into Israeli territory, and slaughtered civilians, I don't see how that's really compatible with a organization that's going to accept an Israeli state. But even a 2017 charter has this one little line in here.
Okay, while the 2017 charter in 2017 didn't directly recognize Israel, it also calls for the what is it? The 1967 borders, which does have Israel on it.
I'm aware, but do you recognize it's a strategy of phases thing where they want to temporarily accept an Israeli state, and then later on.
Okay, so how come when it's talking about Hamas and Muslim people, all of a sudden it's phasing? But if we're talking about the IDF, you can't see that they've been slowly phasing out the Palestinian people and taking the land.
If you read Article 19 of their charter and Article 2 of their charter, in the same charter, they clearly don't recognize Israel. They just wanted to have they basically wanted to have a truce with Fatah, which is why they included that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Palestine can never do anything to Israel anyway, because again, Israel is the one of the most funded militaries, best militaries, and they have the support of most of the world on their side. Yeah, they pissed off all their Middle Eastern brothers, but I mean, the U.S. is a very powerful ally alone. Even if it was just the U.S. alone, Israel would be doing just cushy. It's not like the Palestinian people need to have a strong military and be able to combat and have the same standard of living as Israel, right?
I mean,
well, you can start by
killed 800 civilians on October 7th, right? And they constantly launch rockets into Israel directed at civilian areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you deprive a people of their fucking national identity and slowly eradicate them over time. Eventually, they're going to fucking try to kill you. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It just makes sense. I would fucking be pretty pissed if some settlers came into my fucking land and pretty much over time slowly stripped away my country from me and took away my national identity and was able to get away with war crimes and atrocities over and over again. And then, what do you expect? Them just to sit down and just be like, yeah, we'll take it. Well, it'll be fine.
Them to make any type of concession for peace. I don't want them targeting and killing civilians. I don't want them enacting violence against the Israeli state. I want them trying to come to the table and negotiate a solution.
But to get that, you're going to need a ceasefire, a permanent one, or at least semi-permanent, to the point of it's not going to be we're going to have a 3-week ceasefire and you're going to return all the hostages and then we'll see.
But I don't
because
see,
then that's just going to put you in a worse position of where you were before all of this. And they're not going to take that. You need a pathway to a better situation before October 7th happened, or you're going to get nothing.
But again, I don't see how any better situation ever opens up without Hamas being first gotten rid of.
And in getting rid of Hamas, you're again creating more Hamas fighters by bombing children and infrastructure and making them fucking poor with no self-reliance. And that's never going to go down well. That has never gone down well. I think the only way also...
How do we think Gaza gets richer without Israel getting rid of Hamas? I don't understand.
Demilitarize, re-elections, establish.
Why would Hamas ever want re-elections? Like, I mean, first of all, the majority of Palestinian people still, or actually, fuck, I looked at new numbers today. I think Hamas might have fallen under majority support for the first time in a while. But like a large portion of Palestinian people still support Hamas, and like,
yeah,
most certainly
because
support
Hamas is, again,
violence.
We've already established it's because Hamas is the only people fighting back.
I mean,
the only people that recognize the Palestinian people's plight. Even you here do not fucking care about the Palestinian people. You just care that IDF gets what they want. It's like, it's not like boohoo me. It's not like the Israeli people just were here and then all of a sudden the Palestinians attacked them.
I mean, I obviously want what's best for the Palestinian people, and I don't see how the Palestinian people's situation ever gets better without getting rid of Hamas first. Like, there's literally no... Like, if Israel stops right now and does a permanent ceasefire, it's going to have to blockade him. By the way, that ceasefire proposal that Hamas put forward actually asked for the blockade to come down, I think, as the, like, third phase of the, of the ceasefire, which is insane. I don't see how we can ever open up a pathway.
Which, again, the U.S. liked that ceasefire agreement and pushed for Israel to accept it.
I don't think that... Did the U.S. like the one that Hamas put forward? I know the U.S. liked... I know the U.S. has liked ceasefire proposals in the past, and I specifically... I know Blinken has fucking begged Netanyahu to agree to some of them, but I'm pretty sure even the U.S. was opposed to the one that Hamas put forward that was a permanent ceasefire for the release of 33 hostages in exchange for also the release of prisoners in the West Bank.
Honestly, think that would have been a good one, personally. But, they're not negotiating with me. They're negotiating with the people that have known subjugation and persecution their whole lives. And I've never really got to experience, the cushy lives that the Israel people have. So the way that they think and process things are different. And it's like, there's no way out of this that is going to be clean and, harmless, of course. Like, there's already been just so much damage on both sides, but definitely more on the Palestinian people's side. So I think that Israel should be able to fucking come out of this as, seeing that they fucking won. I mean, what does the fucking Israeli people actually lose from a permanent ceasefire?
This is literally the meme of, putting out 80% of a fire. Like, you understand... If Israel maintains Hamas as the ruling authority in Gaza, that means there's a continuing threat to the Israeli population. I don't see why after October 7th, Israel should have to accept any possibility of another October 7th attack from Hamas. I don't see why they should have to accept
Why should
that.
The Palestinian people live with occupiers that stole their fucking land and has been violent to them and don't even want them to be there? And have openly stated they want an ethno state. They're fucking Zionists. They're proud of it. They want the land for themselves. They think it's God ordained. Well, why should the Palestinians live next to the fucking Israelis? Doesn't make sense.
Don't they only? Didn't we literally agree earlier that they should be making some concessions for peace? That after they lost the war in 49, they shouldn't just be constantly attacking Israel over and over and over again to try to reclaim their territory.
Agree. But you're claiming that it's not fair from the IDFs when I'm asking for concessions or saying that they should be conceding on these fronts. And then I'm saying, well, if it's not fair for them, it's definitely not fair for the Palestinian people.
Israel should obviously make concessions too. I mean, I think the settlements are bad. At various times they have frozen the settlements and it hasn't really gotten them any closer to peace. But I mean, Israel should obviously be willing to make some concessions, but there aren't any concessions you can make with Hamas. The only concession is cease to be a state.
I don't think that's the case. I mean,
you think
they can. I mean, they've been living like this for a long time, right? And while there hasn't been like a super duper hand holding peace, there's been a relative. All right, not fucking 30,000 people dying, right?
Well, yeah, but it's also never been, because there hasn't been on October 7th until now. I mean, Hamas had done rocket attacks into Israel before, but they've never paraglided into music festivals and killed civilians.
Yeah, that music festival thing was pretty bad. Not gonna lie. I don't get why the music festival, maybe it was just to get the hostages, but I think it would have been so much better if they just straight up fucking attacked the military bases only. Would have made them so much more likable, to be honest.
They're jihadist. What do you mean?
Bruh.
Do we not accept that? Do we not accept Hamas is a jihadist organization and wants to kill Jews? Do we need to pull up the phone call of the Palestinian son calling his dad saying, "Dad, I killed 10 Jews. 10 Jews. 10 Jews. There's blood of 10 Jews in my hand. I killed his wife." Like,
I'm not saying that Hamas doesn't want to kill Jewish people, but we're ignoring the fact that Jewish people have been fucking killing Palestinian people for the longest fucking time. And it's not like most Palestinian people are jihadists. The problem here is that Hamas attacked a festival, killed a lot of civilians, and did a pretty huge blow to Israel. Israel retaliated, killed countless more civilians and Hamas terrorists, right? So it's time for the ceasefire and to negotiate. Worst case scenario, we're fucking back to where we were before, which is where they've basically been from the beginning, right?
Well, but at least I don't see why Israel should have to accept the position where they're basically back to where they were from the beginning.
Because they're unable to carry and conduct their military operations in a way that's fucking not conducive to killing innocent civilians at mass rates. I would say that, and there's nothing left in a lot of these areas. Have you seen the pictures of what it looks like after the IDF has been done?
How much of Gaza do you think has been destroyed? I'm just super curious.
Like percentage-wise?
Yeah, percentage-wise. Damaged or destroyed. How many buildings?
How many buildings?
Percent of buildings damaged or destroyed.
I've seen whole towns leveled, so I'm going to say at least half of it at this point.
Okay, it's about 35%. I'm surprised. Listen, I'm so proud of you for not quoting the 70% bullshit number that came directly from the Hamas media organization.
Well, I don't trust the Hamas media organization. They're just going to throw it. That's way too biased in one side. Which is why I also don't trust, the IDF's fucking media sources as well. I like to see what I could see on video, in pictures, and what third-party organizations have to say. Typically humanitarian and aid organizations, because they do a lot of good work, and they're in it not for the fucking war aspect or the propaganda, but to save lives. So,
I mean, but when you organize these humanitarian organizations, we're still mostly going to rely on what the Israeli government or Hamas tells them, right?
It's they have to take some of it, but God damn it. I've seen the numbers from Hamas, and I've seen some from aid organizations that are wildly different numbers on the amount of innocent civilians that have been killed. So clearly that they're not just taking it at the word of just like what Hamas says. Well, also the IDF and the Israel.
We don't have any numbers not from Hamas right now, right? I mean, we have the numbers from the Gaza Health Ministry and the numbers from the GMO, the Gaza Media Office, but that's it. Those are both Hamas affiliated.
Affiliated. And do you mean as in like Hamas terrorists or Hamas?
Hamas, the all of the political organization, I think, runs the media office. And then the Ministry of Health is more independent, but it's still...
Holy fuck, why won't they extract? Dude, my team refuses to extract and we have like 8 minutes. Do you think I should just samples. Do you think I should just like take the I was gonna take the just kill them and extract by myself approach? They're like blocking the
samples, yeah.
Oh, that's what they're fucking doing. Oh my god. Okay, I see what they're doing. Yeah, we're not gonna make it in time. We literally have. Oh my, I'm doing it. I'm just gonna extract without them. But yeah, there's no clear answer here. All right, and we need a lot of people on the ground, and people aren't going to be doing full comprehensive investigations until a lot of this is already fucking well over with. But we need to take some steps, and I think generally the first step is nailing down the ceasefire to some degree. I wonder if it was a longer ceasefire, if Hamas would be willing to take that. I know that they've only called for basically a permanent ceasefire, but I wonder if that's like a realistic thing. You know,
I mean,
like
if you understand, like any ceasefire is going to allow Hamas to like build up strength, right, and try to reconstitute itself in areas that's already been what's the term? Got a run from, I don't know, evacuated from, displaced from, I don't know. But I mean, Hamas's last like super big stronghold is in Rafah. Like, so if there's a ceasefire right now, it's going to allow Hamas to like reconstitute itself in northern Gaza, and then I don't see why there wouldn't be another October 7th at some point, and then we're back in fucking square one.
I mean, you don't see it the same way I see it, because the reason I see October 6th happening is because what they've wanted and needed to happen as a state has consistently been denied by Israel. And that if we give a pathway to this through hella concessions, right, and force the hand of basically dismantling Hamas through these concessions and giving them what they want. I mean, I see two ways this going. Either they willingly do it because they actually fucking wanted these things and they're having a pathway towards it, or they don't do it and you have civil unrest from the fact of, oh, this is what you want? All right, here you go. But it comes with these stipulations from the fucking shit you caused, right? And like I don't really see this being an L, because even if Hamas was able to, let's just say you have like a 4-month like ceasefire or something, a little, a lot longer than what's being proposed, but short relatively. It's not like a fucking years. You still have the Israeli force who took out a lot of major infrastructure, killed a lot of Hamas members, and have insane amounts of military power and aid that constantly keeps on flowing in, while Hamas doesn't have access to a lot of that, and with stricter borders and control over aid and how thoroughly they've been like searching these trucks and stuff, I don't see Hamas being able to recover, like you're saying, in time. Also, I do need to use the restroom sometime soon, so I'll let you say your thing, okay, and then I'll use the restroom.
I mean, I just fundamentally, I don't know how to tell you, man. Hamas is a literal jihadist organization. They don't recognize Israel. They have no plans to recognizing Israel. They're not partners for peace. They have been attacking Israel ever since their inception. Don't know what to tell you. Is this talking about a safe route, or is this talking about a...
Yo, I'm back.
Oh, what's up?
Sorry about that. Fucking just died, man. Ugh. Dude, man, the servers I usually play on are so filled up right now. It's ridiculous.
How are they still having issues with the servers?
No. I switched off of Helldivers when I went to leave. That's what I was like waiting for. I was like, dude, I really need to use the restroom, but like this extraction is taking forever. I want my samples and everything. Oh, that's why. Is that why? Decent community. I'm now trying to get onto DayZ because my brother just got me into it.
Nerd.
He plays like a mod. He used to play a lot of what's it called? The Russian extraction shooter.
I don't know, bro.
Tarkov.
Oh, Tarkov.
Yeah, he played a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played a lot of Tarkov. So I was like, oh, interesting, and wanted to join him on that. But like, I figured out like Tarkov did some stupid stuff where like you have to pay like $250 for like a single player mode or something like that.
Yeah,
and it ruined the community. So he had me get onto this DayZ like modded server where it turns it into Tarkov pretty much. Like it's just one big extraction shooter now.
Awesome.
I know. Really is.
So what do you make of like all of Israel's warnings, especially in northern Gaza, for Palestinians to evacuate before they did their military operation there? Do you think it's all?
I think it's standard protocol, right? Is to give the warning. I mean, we've been doing that in almost every single war.
I mean, kinda, yeah. I mean, they definitely do. I think they do more than most other nations, right? I mean, they did drop flyers, which a lot of flyers drop nation. They also have they literally have their phone banking division. They gave 70,000 direct phone calls, 13 million text messages, 15 million pre-recorded voicemails. They have their drones with speakers attached to them that they use to fly up to high rises and tell them to evacuate. They do something like almost no other nation, to my knowledge, does, which is do the daily pauses in fighting to allow civilians to evacuate. And they publish maps of the safe routes for civilians to evacuate.
Yeah.
So what do we?
I mean,
what do we make of that? Is that
those are good things, but again, some of that you said wasn't like standard. I definitely heard of pauses in war for evacuation in Vietnam, World War II, World War One. I don't know about outside of Western influence, but I know that the U.S. in particularly and some of the European powers, that was something that did happen. But yeah, those are good things. I'm glad that those things do happen, but it doesn't prevent the fact that you're basically talking about a people that have nowhere to go. I mean, no way you slice it, it's eventually where you end up. The fighting comes to you, and they have nowhere to really go. So your only option is just hope I don't die and hope that I'm not mistaken for Hamas, or hope that Hamas isn't near me, or hope that somebody that isn't mistaken for Hamas is near me. And that kind of bothers me. I don't see a good
alternative to that. I mean, I just like, aren't all these things because Hamas co-locates with civilians?
I mean, part of it, yeah. The other part of it is that the IDF doesn't give a fuck if they are with the civilians. They're like, hey, we gave our warning, and that sucks that they followed you because of the warning, and yeah, we're still going to attack anyway. And it's like,
doesn't the warning indicate that they want to minimize civilian casualties? And isn't that indicative of at least a policy of trying to minimize civilian casualties?
Yeah, it is indicative, but the point of it is that while they do try to warn the area so they can say, hey, we warned the area, it really doesn't matter when it comes to, hey, if we know or think there's Hamas in this area, if civilians, we're still full sending, which is kind of, to me, that's the problem right there. I think it's fucking disgusting.
Do you know what the MAG Corps are? The MAG Corps?
The MAG Corps? What about it?
They're the team of lawyers Israel has that is in charge of like examining whether or not these strikes are proportional, that they literally consult with to make sure that the strikes they do on these areas are proportional.
Yeah, they're pretty well crafted. I mean, it's one of the smartest genocides I've ever seen. You're damn right.
I don't
listen. Like, if you were to ask me, how do you commit a genocide without the world instantly shutting it down, right? And there's basically every step that Israel has taken to me has been of, all right, this is how you basically get away with slowly taking land, killing and replacing a ethnic population in the area, and becoming dominant. That from the inception of the Israel state to now, like, they've done it perfect, bro.
I mean,
because if they kill too many people, that shit will be shut down.
Do you realize any argument of proportionality is already accepting that the attack itself was lawfully directed at a military target? It just had excessive collateral damage. You understand that's not genocide, right? Excessive collateral damage is not genocide. They're two fundamentally different things. You can either fail in distinction or fail in proportionality. What you're talking about right now is a failure in proportionality, not a failure in distinction. I just don't. Can you? This is genocide to you.
They've literally said that they do not distinguish between civilians and Hamas. Like, there's been multiple statements about this, so I don't. Where top officials have said that if they're in the area, they're Hamas, and that anybody that is still in or protesting or fucking helping with aid or in these locations at this time, yeah, you're fucking Hamas. Like, that's.
I mean, one, if you're directly partaking in hostilities, you can be lawfully targeted.
Aid isn't is not partaking in hostilities.
Aid isn't, but like, why do we think the ratio of like combatants to civilians killed is like at most 1 to 4?
Why do I think?
Yeah, isn't that kind of like, isn't that like a normal ratio for war? And that's like the absolute worst ratio from Israel's side. That's if we accept Hamas's number of both the civilians killed and the militants killed.
Okay, but I don't accept that as a good ratio. I mean, you're saying, hey, this is fine because you're like, hey, it's fine because your country also did fucked up things, and it's like, yeah, it was fucked up.
That number does not support a genocide. I don't see. How could Israel engage in war with Hamas without it being a genocide then? Is there literally no way that they could do that? Genocide isn't exactly on the proportionality of it. It isn't, if you killed X amount of people. It's about the intent, which is very hard to absolutely, prove. Which you've been talking about the proportionality this whole time, which is wild to me because any talk of proportionality, you're already accepting that the attack was lawfully directed at a military target.
Because I wasn't arguing the genocide aspect of this. I was arguing about the reason of needing a ceasefire and the war crime aspect of it, which is what we started on. I did call it a genocide like 3 or 4 times during it, but I didn't say this is why it's a genocide.
So what could Israel do to make it not a genocide? Or is there literally nothing they could do to make it not a genocide other than just stop?
Stop the pretty much indiscriminate killings, stop the ethnic replacement, stop the talk of ethno-state and actively replacing the people in Gaza, stop fucking planning about how you're going to build your luxury condos in the Gaza Strip, allow in aid, allow independence of the people from this and for them to be liberated from the IDF and their controlling regime in the area. Prevent it from being an open-air prison by allowing them the food that they need for this to stop being a famine. Allow people the ability to seek refuge in other countries without the threat of, hey, we're going to bring you into conflict if you accidentally fucking take in like one Hamas member, bro. You know, things like this would instantly make it not a genocide. Like,
it's Egypt that's not letting Palestinians in. The reason you're right on the reason they're not letting Palestinians in is because they're concerned that Hamas would operate out of the Sinai, but that's more indicative of a failure on the Palestinian side than it is on Israel's side. I don't understand the point there.
Palestine basically isn't a state anymore after what has happened. Like, I mean, it was already, borderline, because that's been the whole goal, is to make sure that it's not a fucking state. But now more than ever, it's like, what do the fucking refugees have to do with Egypt not accepting them? You're acting like, oh, it's Palestine's fault. Well, what is a refugee in Palestine supposed to fucking do? How is this their fucking fault?
What they've been doing, fleeing to the areas that Israel tells them to flee to. That Israel gives them advance warning.
Until that area is fucking bombed, but they're running out.
Which is why Israel has set up a dedicated humanitarian zone, and they've actually expanded that zone before they invaded Rafah, that Israel hasn't bombed yet, and Israel is letting aid into that zone. And
as the pattern has gone, what happens when that zone is then
that zone has not been bombed? That's the only dedicated safe zone that's ever been made. I'm saying,
what happens? What happens when that point? Because first it was, hey, evacuate this area. Okay, evacuate this area. Now evacuate this area. Now evacuate this area. And now, like, what happens when you no longer have any places? What happens when that's literally the only spot?
Just because you tell people to evacuate an area doesn't mean every single other area is a safe area. There's only been one designated safe area that Israel has set up.
You're not listening. You're saying there's one fucking area that they can go to that's a safe area. I'm saying that now that every area else is being stripped away, what happens when that one area is literally the only area? So Hamas can only operate out of that area, and that's the only area where innocent people can go to. So now they have full justification for bombing that area. Like, are they just going to make a brand new one and be like, okay, now, and then just keep on moving the dot? I would
imagine if Hamas operates out of that safe area, they would tell civilians to flee to a separate safe area they set up and try to get rid of the Hamas that was operating in that safe area.
Yeah, so just move the dot, basically. Just keep on moving it.
Until Hamas is removed as the ruling authority in Gaza.
And hope that the people could move in time, don't get mistaken. Hope that, they can somehow get food, water, and that there's enough supplies coming in on a consistent basis. And God hopes that nothing happens with any Hamas, getting in the way or using them as human shields, as they keep on claiming while moving from place to place. You see how it just becomes okay, keep on running where we tell you to run and hope that you don't fucking die. I don't see.
You understand at some point Hamas would be removed as the ruling authority in Gaza, right? And it seems like once they go into Rafah, Hamas has effectively lost a significant amount of its power in the Gaza Strip. And at that point, that's the only way I ever see Palestinians' lives getting better. That's the only way I see that the blockade can start to be eased and money can start to flow into the Gaza Strip without Israel being worried that it's going to be used to make rockets. That's the only way that can happen.
Let's see. Let's take a look. So, let's just say, how many Hamas members do you think there are, in total?
In total, 30 to 40,000. I think it was the number before the war, at least.
Okay, so let's go max. 40,000, and then they kill 40,000 civilians as well, and now, now it's good. Now we're fine.
What do you mean now we're fine? I mean, once
goal,
Hamas
right?
is removed as the ruling authority in Gaza, that's the only way I see Gaza ever being rebuilt. And these root conditions that you keep talking about that are responsible for radicalism, that's the only way I ever see those being addressed.
Yeah. So if it keeps continuing being a 1-for-1, right? Then we're talking 40,000 civilians. If it's a 1-to-2, we're talking 80,000 civilians, and you can take it up to the 1 and 4, which would be 160,000 civilians dead. So once we eliminate every single Hamas member, and if the ratio keeps on going, it's 40 to 160,000 innocents dead. And infrastructure 30%, maybe more destroyed upwards, because you said it's 4% now.
30,
that's only going
5% damage or destroyed. But do we think we have to kill literally every single Hamas member? I think the goal of Israel is to what Israel's trying to do right now is basically remove the remaining brigades and Rafah as functioning corporations, and that doesn't require killing every single member in them. That just requires killing some proportion of them. removing the tunnels or flooding the tunnels or blowing up the tunnels. That doesn't require killing every single member. And as long as we see a full civilian evacuation of Rafah before they start doing an advanced military operation there, which just looks like that's what Israel is planning on doing. They've been dropping leaflets on Rafah, right? And they expanded the designated humanitarian zone for people in Rafah to flee to. I don't expect to see any major increases in civilian casualties.
I guess only time will tell on that one. I do expect you're going to see the number keep on going up as it has been, but you're right, it might slow down.
Well, it's already slowed down.
It's going to keep on going up. I still think it's going to go, up at I would call it more of a steady rate instead of a holy shit, it was what number and then now it's what. But yeah. Oh, it's messy, and I just don't think you and I are going to see eye to eye on this. I mean, the foundation of the Israel state was already, to me, that was mistake number one. I mean, number two was putting it where it is, but I just don't see how it works when you have fucking literal ethno-state Andes that think that God gave them fucking land and putting them next to another people who are fucking Quran Andes who literally have nothing left other than their religion, right? Who are willing, to them, what else do they fucking lose at this point, right? So when you have those two people, all I see is this just continuing to be bad. And the person that has the majority of the power to me in this situation is fucking Israel. And they've always had the majority of power. And the thing is that Israel has consistently been able to bully the Palestinian people. And the moment that there is any fucking major pushback on it, they can always cry, well, they're trying to kill all Jewish people, despite their consistent aggravation of the Muslims in this area. And to me, this doesn't fucking make sense, but I don't know. That's just fucking me, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I guess, just me. I feel like Hamas's military capacity has to be destroyed to a point where they can no longer pose a continued threat to the existence of Israel or Israeli civilians. Israel definitely have to make some concessions. I think the settlements are bad, and I think it obviously there's always going to be some level of terrorism against Israel until the conditions in Gaza get better. But there's just no way that ever happens without Hamas's military capacity being destroyed.
Yeah. And the only way it seems that they could destroy it is by taking a good chunk of people with them.